Hello, everybody. It is great to be here one more time today. And my name is Gary Fowler, and I am the host of GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been involved in 17 startups and several unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also the co-founder of Eva.ai. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce Chaitanya Sinh. Chait is a CEO and partner on Bombax India. He's going to talk a little bit about what Bombax is doing. He's going to talk about his own environment and how he's making his own difference in the universe. And he's a rugby player, so I want to figure out what rugby's all about. And with that, I'd like to introduce Chait. Hi, Chait. How are you doing today?
Hi, Gary. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great. So tell me a little bit about it. So what did you do? You played rugby for a few years. Is it as hard as it seems? Is it a tough sport?
I was very lucky, Gary. I started playing rugby at an early age in India, and then played in the US as well, played a little bit in Scotland, and then was very lucky to play rugby for India as the captain of the Indian team, and led the team to many tours overseas on the Asian circuit, even toured England. So it's been a big part of my life. It's taught me a lot. And I've thoroughly enjoyed being part of the sporting environment. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's a big part of me.
Wow. So now you must have been like a celebrity playing rugby. You must have been sign autograph, Chait, and everything, and all that.
I think in my entire playing career, maybe there were one or two that I handed out, Gary. But it's not a very big sport. Not a lot of visibility in India. It is changing though, because it's now become an Olympic sport. So there's a lot of more money in it, a lot more interest, even from the US point of view. So it is expanding, it is growing. But I played at a time when it was still very nascent in the country. It was the formative years.
Wow, it's amazing. So you were at 38th and Walnut Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. What made you decide to go to the University of Pennsylvania?
Well, like a lot of kids in India, Gary, the US is the hallowed ground, so to speak, in terms of education and in terms of exposure. So applied as an undergraduate to the University of Pennsylvania, as well as some other schools, but obviously UPenn being an Ivy was amongst my top choices. And then, spent 4 years there, playing rugby. Obviously, did my business degree from there as well. So it was at the Wharton School. And then finished with a major in entrepreneurial management. And then, obviously started working for a couple of companies trading GDRs, and then got into my entrepreneurial venture. So it's been a wonderful path and a road. And when I look back, I think some of my fondest memories are the ones that I spent at Penn and the friends I made over there, and the experience I had.
Now, do you still stay connected with your friends from University of Pennsylvania?
Very much so. Very much so. I even joined a fraternity house whilst I was there, and went for the
really?
entire. So I was a Phi Delt. I was a Phi Delt.
Wow.
Still had. Made some wonderful friends and connections there, Gary. Which are still very much alive now.
Wow, that's amazing. So you went from there, and so you came back. You came back to India. Then you were doing the rugby. You went to City Strategic Advisors. What was that all about?
So before that, I was a trader. I was an equity trader. So we're looking at mid 1990s. India had just opened up. We had been a mixed economy before that, very restricted. Post 1990s, it opened up with Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was at that time the finance minister. And Indian companies for the first time were raising finance overseas, and they came up with the global depository receipts and the American depository receipts. So they were basically underlying paper for equity lying in India, which were traded on the NSE and the FTSE. So it was, I was trading at that time, working and trading for companies like Bear Stearns, IFM Asset Management, Nomura, Peregrine International through a company called Skindia, who was also run by an ex-Wharton MBA at that time. So started up on that, and I did that for about 4 or 5 years. We were doing arbitrage, spot arbitrage, sometimes at 25 and 30%. It was, a wonderful time to be doing GDR arbitrage at that time. So I did that for many years, and then kind of got into my entrepreneurial journey in the early 2000s. So set up a company called Ala Concierge first, which was a support services company for large corporations. We basically run the admin departments of very large companies, and that did tremendously well. And then set up City Strategic, and City Strategic was a joint venture with a Hong Kong-based company, which was at that time doing stored value gift cards. And Value Access and City Strategic got into a joint venture, and we launched the stored value gift card program in India successfully. Ran that for a few years. My business partner and co-director was the managing director of that company. And then we sold out to GiveX. GiveX is a very large Chinese company which bought out the entire the business from us. So we exited from that, and then that's when I started Bumbax. So that's been the journey.
Wow, that's amazing. So how was it? So you were in University of Pennsylvania. You were at City for 7 years, right? How was it coming back over to India after you were over in the States? What kind of differences did you see? How different was it?
Very different. So the India I left and the India I came back to were fairly different, because the India I left still had no cable network, still had no internet, still had very limited brands and retail options. And so I left in 88, 89. And by the time I came back in the mid 90s, there was a market change, because the government had changed, the policies had changed. It was really the new India, the story we all see and hear about now, about the growth story and India and developing and getting to the $5 trillion GDP mark, all started in the 1990s. So when I left, it was very different. And when I came back, obviously also with the exposure of the US, I came back at a very, very exciting time in India. Things were just starting up. National Stock Exchange had just been launched, which was apart from the Bombay Stock Exchange. So very, very interesting times, and very fortunate to have worked with some very, very good people at that time.
So what are some of the differences culturally between India and the US? You're on both sides of the fence. What are some of the differences?
So I guess in India, it's much more conservative. People still are extremely family oriented. There is a hierarchy. There is a so-called reverence of traditions, of cultures, of people. Whereas I find in the US, it is much more meritocratic. I think people are much more, I mean, brash might not be the right word, but much more motivated and focused on advancing themselves and being the best version of themselves. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in India, but in India, there's always certain constraints, and people are always worried to cross certain boundaries. And am I going to upset somebody? And, is this the right thing to do? And there's a morality kind of built into the culture. Whereas in the US, I think those lines are little frayed or aren't as stringent.
And how was it? You were in a fraternity in University of Pennsylvania. How was that?
That was absolutely fantastic, Gary. It opened up a whole new world to me. So went through pledging for a year. Made some of my best friends over there. We were put through the grinder, as you can imagine. And then had road trips. I played rugby in university as well, so there were lots of rugby players in the house. So it was a brotherhood, and taught me a lot about relationships, about making teams, about facing adversity, about overcoming it together. So yeah, it was lots. When I look back now, it was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I understand. I was in a fraternity too, Tau Kappa Epsilon, and we had a lot of fun. That's for sure. Did a
Yeah.
lot of crazy. We
Yeah,
had
yeah,
road trips. It was
I can imagine.
like a movie. Uh, so tell me a little bit about it. So now, how did you come up with the idea of Bombax? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why it's so important today.
So I'm going to just take 2 minutes to set this up in terms of a history lesson. So India's been through three eras of development post-independence. So if we look at 1950 to 1964, it was, the Gandhian philosophy and the Nehruvian socialism. So it was a new country. Idealism was big. Partition was bloody. So we had a government which was very conservative. We didn't have much foreign exchange. The British had stripped us of a lot of our resources. So we were really trying to build, and the building was done by restrictions, by license Raj, by being very tight on the economy. So we went through 1950 to 1964, 14 years of the license Raj and bureaucracy which was set in, which didn't exist before. So that really kind of set the benchmark for the first 14 years. And then 64 to 1990, we had the second era, and that was really, again, very tumultuous. It was one. So, I mean, just to give you and try to tie this up into logistics, in 1950, there were three airports in India. In between 1964 and 1990, the airline policy and only came in 1998.
Wow.
So before that, it was privatization. The airlines were privatized. There was strict control. Airports weren't developed. So it was really controlled by restriction. And it's only so and so 1964 to 1994. What happened during that period is we had the Green Revolution, which was great because we became sustainable with our food supply. But everything else was trial and error. So they tried to liberalize, and there was inflation at 30%. They stopped liberalization. Emergency was declared. So we had this mix of private and public, mixed economy. Trials were going on and experiments were going on, and it was still people finding their feet. And then it's only post 1990 that we've seen the sustained opening up, liberalization, globalization, which happened worldwide, right? Post 1990, we've seen the kind of globalization that we haven't witnessed before. And I'm setting this up because what's happened, and when I looking ahead at what the challenges are and the opportunities are in logistics, it's kind of important to look back and see why we've arrived at this situation. And we've arrived at this situation because we've not been able to, or not been able to, the government of India hasn't had the ability to go out and make massive reforms, which they're doing now. So post 1990, that's happened. So what we've got, think about this, 95% of air cargo movement in India happens within only the top 7 airports. 95%, 7 airports.
Well, that's
right?
unbelievable. How do they carry all that cargo? That's crazy amount of cargo.
So that's where the infrastructure is. That's where the line hauls are set up. And then from those 7 airports, they're moving the goods by surface to all the other small regional places. So that becomes inefficient because I fly it Mumbai, Delhi, and then if I have to move it to Chandigarh, which is the state capital of, it's actually the state capital of two states, Haryana and Punjab. It needs to move by surface, right? So there's no direct connectivity. If I need to send something urgently to Chandigarh, I can't do it because the line haul isn't set. Likewise, the top 7 airports move 95%. So that's one of the problems. It's a $250 billion industry, logistics today, growing with a CAGR of over 10%, going to be $450 billion by 2027, right? Consumption demand going up, largest number of internet users in the world. We're going to be 900 internet users by 2025. Largest young population, 600 million people below 25 years of age. We've got the 3rd largest economy. We've got the 3rd largest army. We're building this capacity, but the engine's moving, but it's not running smoothly yet. And so what we're trying to do with Bombax and the logistics is try and get ahead in terms of where do we see consumption demand coming? What is the kind of infrastructure we need to build out today to be able to service it? And what do we expect logistics demand to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years? So we're kind of building capacity around that. We're kind of bracing our strategy around that. So for us, our focus is to connect the regional airports. So we've identified 30 airports in India. A lot of these in state capitals, which are not part of those 7 airports, right? Which are state capitals: Patna, Bihar, Ranchi, Jamshedpur, Cochin, Srinagar, Chandigarh. I mean, we've identified 30 large consumption-driven airports which we want to set up our hubs in, and then we want to supplement that with what we call RDH, rural distribution hubs. So we have direct connections to these 30 airports, and we're supplementing that with the rural distribution hubs, which will help us penetrate rural demand, because that's where 50% of the 5 trillion economy consumption is going to come in the next 5 years. So that's what we're building out. And then obviously we've got the tech part, which allows us to differentiate on the demand side, the supply side agility that we're building. So we're trying to link all that together. It's 4 years since we started up, and it's been, I mean, we're learning every day. We're growing, we're expanding, and we're having fun with it.
So tell us a little bit about the growth. How are you doing in terms of growth? What's your growth rate?
So we're growing over 100% year on year. We currently are running at about $300,000 a month monthly revenue. We've just signed on a couple of very large clients and expect to hit $500,000 a month revenue by December. And this has all happened post-COVID. So obviously the 2 years in COVID, we started in 2017, October, kind of set up infrastructure, 18 and 19. Obviously 2021 got hit with COVID, and then it's only been 21, 22 where we've really seen the growth and the consumption coming back. So, we're looking at an annual revenue of $3.5 to $4.5 million this year. Monthly revenue, like I said, of $500,000 by December. So there's plenty of, the India story, Gary. Despite the strong headwinds that are happening economically, globally, including the US markets, including interest rates going up, including the war in Ukraine, including what's happening in China, India's story is still very strong. And we feel that if we get into the core supply side and we build that out successfully, then it'll become an extremely valuable proposition.
No, it sounds like you're doing a great job. So what's in store? Like, what are your overall goals? I mean, where do you want the company to go?
So we would like to be on the CEP, the Courier Express Parcel side segment. We would like to be amongst the top 2 companies in India. Currently, the number 1 company is Blue Dart. They're owned by DHL. So DHL owns Blue Dart in India, and they are the premier CEP company. They have their own freighters, airlines. They have their own trucks, their own line hauls, their own warehousing, the integrated logistics. They do a fantastic job. There is other competition as well, but the DTDC at number 2, and then all the others in 3, 4, 5 regional players. It's highly disorganized. So we would want to come in the next 5 years and be a real competitor to Blue Dart. We would want to be, in some cases, even on the express side, we want to be able to offer more express services than even Blue Dart, because our connecting the regional airports are going to allow us to offer a lot more PIN codes for express services than anybody else does. Our supply chains, our line haul are very agile. We use underutilized aircraft belly space to move cargo. We're not reliant on our freighters. So while, this is like...
that sounds like the perfect world, right? That's a perfect
Yeah, so we see the opportunity, Gary. It's just a question of now being able to execute it and build a team and sustainability around it. I think the big challenge for us moving ahead is the ability to scale and manage that scale.
And what about raising money? What are you going to do are you raising money?
Yes, so we are. We've been through a fantastic accelerator program recently, and so we're now speaking to investors. We're in 3 or 4 second and third phase discussions with some world-class VCs, and we're looking to raise about 8 million currently, and we expect that to be able to take us to, in 5 years, almost $250 million in revenue, with over $1 billion valuation. That's what we're looking at, and valuation in today's time of 5x and 6x of revenue, not 15 and 20 that people have been seeing in the past. So we're realistic about what we need to do. We're excited about the opportunity. But yes, we are looking for the right partner. We are looking for the right kind of investment, somebody who believes in us and the India story and sees the vision and the opportunity as we see it.
No, that's great. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you? They're interested in investing or they want to partner with you. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
So, I mean, obviously we have a website, we have, which is bombax.in, LinkedIn, again, Bombax India, same with our social media pages. So we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're all over. Apart from that, obviously, email me directly, chaitanya.sin@bombax.in. It's easily available. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, all the information is there. So I guess that's the best way to do it.
No, that sounds great. Chai, you do an amazing job. You got an amazing company. I love your background, and thanks for sharing rugby and the fraternity stories. I love those things. And to my audience out there, thank you for tuning in one more time to GSD Presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. And I'm your host, Gary Fowler. Stay tuned for another exciting edition. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. Check out Boombax. Check out Chai. It means incredible guy, an incredible company, and looking at raising some money and making a dent in the universe. Thanks again, Chai. Thanks, everybody. Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much.